Today's episode is brought to you by HERdacity. HERdacity is a nonprofit inspiring confidence in women to achieve their professional goals. For resources, networking opportunities, and a strong community of women, visit HERdacity.org to learn more.
Welcome to HERdacious, a podcast for audacious women. This is HERdacious, a podcast for audacious women who need a little bit of support along their career journey. My name's Lorelei, and I am glad to host this conversation today as we discuss budget basics and the general know-how around that. Joining me in this conversation is founder and finance coach of City Girl Savings, teaching women how to create and stick to realistic budget plans, Miss Raya Reaves.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here with HERdacious.
Thank you for joining us. We are pleased as punch to have you.
Oh, anytime I get to talk about budgeting, I'm there. So
super grateful for that. Not sure that this conversation will be the most comfortable for some of us, but I am glad that we are having it.
I agree. And you know what? Why don't we just all take a deep breath and just know that we are just talking here? Let's make it smooth. Let's make it not scary. Let's have this conversation. We need it.
Where do we start in the conversation on budgeting? Like, everybody knows it's important, but just because I was taught that it was important doesn't mean that I do it.
Yeah, I guess you could say the same with dieting, right? We know exactly what we should be doing for the most part, but it's not always easy to do. And I think with budgeting, the best way to start is to start from the top. Be very simple, basic, budgeting basics here. Start with your income. How much do you earn every month? Then start with your expenses. How much do you spend every month? What is left over after that? So take your total income, subtract your total expenses. What do you have left? So when you take it from that aspect, it's very simple. It's very logical. It's just math, right? So as long as you know what money's coming in and you know what money's going out, it's up to you to do what you need to do with the money that is left over, if there's money left over. But it all starts right there.
Yeah, but why is it important?
Because if you don't know what you're working with in terms of your financial situation, how do you know what you can accomplish? How do you know how to move forward? For example, if you don't take your income and subtract your expenses and see that you're in the negative, how do you know you need to make a change, right? If you don't take your income and subtract your expenses and see a profit, how do you know how much you should be saving or how much extra should go to debt? That's why it's important, because if you don't know, you can't do. And if you can't do, you can't reach your goals.
Now, the work that you do with City Girl Savings lends itself to finance for women specifically, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Why did you choose that avenue to pursue as far as empowering women in their finances?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first and foremost, I knew what it took for me to change my lifestyle. I am a spender by nature. I was very much a spender living in a big city, and budgeting is literally what turned my world around. And once I turned my world around, I really thought about how I can help other people do the same. And the best way for me to do that is to talk to people who are just like me, aka women who like to spend money, who like to enjoy life, who don't necessarily know what they should be doing with their money, but they want to know what to do. So, it was really easy for me to say, okay, I'm helping women with this. And don't get me wrong, I will never turn anybody down who needs help with their finances, but I'm here for the ladies.
All right. And that's why we brought you into this conversation. So how did you get started in this sector?
In the budgeting space?
The budgeting space.
Yeah, I almost feel like I put myself in that space. But so, like I mentioned, I was a big spender, was living in a big city, and a budget turned my situation around. So for me, it was very clear to see that budgeting was the solution to my money problems. And once I was able to figure that out, it was easy for me to say, okay, here's what I am good at, because I made my budget work for me and I've helped other women do the exact same. So it was almost effortless and what it should be. And that's really how I became the budgeting coach I am today. Budgeting has always been my specialty and it will always be my specialty. And I feel like with a budget, you can accomplish so many other things, but it truly does start there, in my opinion.
So since you became your own savior in your personal finances, what are some of the warning signs that the fellow ladies listening to us could be like, uh-oh, maybe I do need to really hone in on a budget? Like, what were some of the warning signs for you to be like, I got to get my fiscal house in order?
I'm so glad you asked that. Unfortunately, my biggest warning sign was an eviction notice.
Shut the front door.
Walking up to my apartment door in Los Angeles, California, living alone, young 20-year-old, seeing the eviction notice, and it just, my heart stopped. It was just a terrible, terrible experience. And there were signs before that. I just disregarded them because everything always seemed to kind of make itself work. But if anybody can avoid an eviction notice as being their sign, I would highly encourage that.
Right.
So some of the warning signs would be you are living paycheck to paycheck, meaning you don't have money in your account by the time your next paycheck comes. So that's a big sign. Another sign is you have to decide which bill to pay because you don't have enough money in your account to pay for all of the bills.
Okay.
That's another big sign. If you have to use credit cards because you have ran out of money in your account, that's another sign.
Credit cards for a normal expense.
Yes, or a discretionary expense, right? Sometimes we can convince ourselves that, hey, I have this credit line, I might as well go get my hair done, but you don't have the money to get your hair done in your bank account. So that would be number one.
All right. So let's just assume that a few of us out there don't have a budget. And we don't have a budget because it can feel a little scary to do that analysis on ourselves, or we don't make the time to do that inventory, or whatever other story we're creating that hinders us from creating this process for ourselves. Talk to me about some of these fears that people and women specifically hold around budgeting, or the misconceptions that we might have about working a budget and sticking to a budget and the benefits of a budget in general.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions about budgeting is the fact that people feel like if they have a budget, they're limited. They can't have fun. They're constrained. Things are too tight. It's almost like you hear the word budget and you think, oh, okay, she can't do anything. And that's absolutely not the case. In fact, I encourage myself and my clients to factor in fun spending into their budget. But before I go off on that tangent, getting us back on track, also people thinking that they never learned how to budget, therefore it doesn't really matter because they're not going to be good at it anyways, and they've gotten this far without it.
Okay, yeah.
That's another one. And then I would also say people think they either make too little money to budget. So they think, okay, well, I'm not making much. A budget's not going to help me, which is absolutely not true. Or they're making so much money that they think they can figure it out without a budget. Also not true. So I would say those are some of the most common misconceptions about budgeting that we all just need to throw out the window.
Okay. So how can we start normalizing the process of budgeting?
Yeah, I would say a few ways. First, just get yourself on a basic budget. And there are so many resources out there for just simple budgeting templates, budget trackers, or you can just do it good old pen and paper. Write your income, write your expenses.
Does anybody even have that anymore?
Pen and paper?
Yeah.
You'd be surprised, Lorelei. You would be surprised. Yes, they do.
All right. Okay, so we get down to the business of making a budget, as in we've created space, we've created time, we've gathered all the needed information. Where do we start? How do we set ourselves up to craft this big, scary budget?
Yeah. Well, first, it's not scary, right? Like, let's try to throw those thoughts out the window. Let's just look at this as a logical process. And
Yes, ma'am.
when I say that, it's the numbers are black and white. That's the one good thing about math, budgeting. I mean, it is what it is, right? So,
Aren't they black and red?
oh, you're right. A little bit of negative in there. No, we don't want red.
Okay,
What are you
okay.
talking about?
Okay. We're getting out of the red by budgeting.
Exactly. So I would say start basic template, kind of outline this, but I want to make sure I hone in for the people listening. Start with your income. What is the consistent amount of money you are bringing in on a monthly basis?
Okay.
What number is that? Okay. So step 1, just get that number.
All right. X amount of dollars.
X amount of dollars. Okay. Step 2, it's going to be a little bit more time consuming, not difficult, just time consuming, depending on how much you spend. What are all of your expenses for the month? All of them. Get them all out, total them up. What's that number? And don't forget things like groceries, food. If you get your nails done regularly, your nails. If you go to the gym, your gym membership. Literally everything you spend money on a monthly basis, what's that number?
Okay. Gas in the car, Netflix subscription, all the things.
All the things, wine, whatever it is, okay?
All right.
What's that number? Okay.
Y amount of dollars.
Y amount of dollars. Then you take your X amount of dollars, aka your income, subtract your Y amount of dollars, aka your expenses, and then you get either a profit or a deficit.
Oh,
okay.
That's the business right there.
That's the business, but you know what? Until you know if you're at a profit or a loss, you can't really move forward the right way.
Okay.
So always keep that in mind. Like, this knowledge is powerful because it can help you move forward the best way possible. Okay?
All right.
So let's just say it's a profit.
Yay!
Yay! Okay. Now, this is where you can start thinking about what you really want out of life. Do you want an emergency fund?
Yes.
Okay. Start saving for it.
All right.
You got a profit.
Check.
Do you want to pay off debt?
Yes.
All right. You have a profit.
Check.
Let's put extra money towards it. Do you want to travel?
Yes. When I can, one day, when COVID's gone.
Not right now.
Check.
I mean, we will eventually, right? Hopefully. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
But start saving for it, right? Just because we don't know exactly when we're going to be traveling doesn't mean we won't be.
All right.
Basically, leverage that profit to help you reach whatever goal you have.
So, Raya, after we understand what our numbers are telling us, and we might perhaps be in the red, scary situation that might be, or maybe I need to stop using the word scary, challenging situation that might be, tell me more about our options when our income just isn't quite cutting it.
Okay. So you ultimately have 2 options. You can increase your income, so work extra hours, get a second job, or you can decrease your spending. And I would suggest starting with the discretionary areas. So think things like your Starbucks coffees, your nails, your hair, going out to eat every night, going to the bars. Well, you're probably not going to the bars right now, but if that's typically where you spend your money, you want to cut back on those things so you can at least get to a break-even point. Once you're at break-even, you're no longer in the red, you're no longer falling behind. The next step is to get ahead and get a profit.
Okay. And at that point, we're going to take a quick sponsor break to get ahead on thanking our advertisers.
Hi, I'm Terry Broussard-Williams, the founder of Movement Maker, an online platform that inspires the changemaker in you to set the world afire. For the tools to find the fire within yourself and to build movements within your community, visit movementmakertribe.com. Let's be HERdacious together.
And we're back with Raya Reaves talking about budgeting. So, Raya, now that we have the foundation for crafting a budget, going through the basics of understanding the money coming in versus the money going out and what that leaves us with, where do we go from there? Because I know you already mentioned a little bit about discretionary spending and how you might need to pay more attention to it. You've also mentioned a little bit about savings, and I imagine we need to have the debt conversation too.
Oh, yes, we do, because debt is real.
All right, so where do we want to dig into that?
So let's first start with discretionary. I just want to hone in on the point that discretionary spending is okay, in moderation, okay? And when I say in moderation, I basically mean you're not spending all of your profit on things you don't need. Maybe 10 to 20% of it.
10 to 20%. Isn't that the amount I'm supposed to be saving every month?
We're talking about your profit here, right? 10 to 20% of your profit. Okay, so we have your income, we have your expenses, we know what's left over.
Okay.
Right? That leftover amount, say 10 to 20% of it can go to enjoying yourself.
Oh, you hear that, fam? 10 to 20% of everything that's left after your regular expenditures, that's the playtime money.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you for honing that in.
So uncomfortable.
Hey, you know what? As you make more money, guess what? That 10 to 20% gets bigger and bigger. As you pay off your debt, that's just more money that can go into your pocket. But if we have goals, we got to focus on those things first. We got to get our priorities in order before we're out on a beach somewhere with debt.
Yes, voice of reason. Carry on.
So, starting with your discretionary spending, 10 to 20% is a safe percentage to work with. Okay. If you are spending more than that, start cutting back. Think about the things that truly make you happy and keep those things. Not everything is going to make you exceptionally happy, right? And if it does, I mean, we can go off on another conversation here, but you want to just make sure that you're not supplementing any other feelings with spending money.
Got it. That's the shopping therapy conversation.
Exactly. So again, moderation, it's totally fine to treat yourself. If you have, let's just say, 4 invitations to go out in a month, maybe only go to 1 or go to 2 and get comfortable with saying no and give yourself grace too. If you're new to this, if you're new to cutting back, if you're new to budgeting, don't be so hard on yourself. Just recognize when you didn't do exactly what you were supposed to do or what you set out to do and work to improve that moving forward. Like, let's be gracious with ourselves.
So being cognizant of our discretionary spending and keeping an eagle eye on that.
Yes, 100%.
Being a little more kind to ourselves.
Yes.
On our spending learning curve. And then what?
And then what? Okay, so we've already established 10 to 20% can go to you enjoying yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's either do you save or do you pay off debt? And this is a common question I get. Well, which one do I do first?
Indeed. Which one do we do first?
So let's talk about what do you already have saved? So let's just ask the question. Do you have anything in savings?
Let's just go ahead and say no.
Okay, then we start there.
Okay.
Right? Because if something were to come up and you're putting all of your extra money towards your credit cards, your tire goes flat. What are you going to do?
Put it on a credit card because I don't have any money.
Exactly. And we're starting the cycle over.
Right.
We're not about that life. So get yourself a little nest egg. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. So I know Dave Ramsey suggests $1,000 just across the board flat. Get your $1,000 and then focus on debt. I don't necessarily agree.
Tell me why.
I think everybody's situation is a little different. I think if you have kids that you're responsible for or other human beings you're responsible for, maybe $1,000 isn't enough.
Okay.
Right? Or if you're a single lady living in, a very good steal of an apartment, something as high as $1,000 is very unlikely to happen. Maybe you only need $500. Right? So it's really about just assessing your situation and finding a number that is not too unrealistic, that it gets you demotivated to save for it, but it's realistic enough that if something were to happen, you have this fund put to the side and you'll be okay.
All right. So as a budget basics guru here, I know you just told us that everybody is individualized in setting their goal. What is your recommended savings account number for the majority of us? Is it like 3 months income, 6 months income, 1 year? Like, what do you think would serve us best in protecting ourselves to have in savings?
Okay, that's a really good question. And I just want to make this distinction. If you have debt and the goal is to pay off debt, I don't think you need a very large emergency fund. Okay, that's a goal that you can focus on after you pay off debt. A safe number that I would recommend you have in your savings is 1 month's worth of expenses. So whatever that looks like to you, you already know what that number is, right? Because you already mapped it out. Get that saved. And once you have that saved, everything on top of that, everything that comes in after that goes towards paying off your debt.
Okay. So debt is the looming shadow in this conversation. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's because it's so expensive.
Yes.
I mean, does it really make sense to keep those balances going on and on when you're accruing interest on a daily basis?
I would say not.
I mean, no, right? No, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And it's holding you back and it's draining and it's probably not helping you sleep at night. And you're probably wondering, well, how am I going to afford to pay all this? I'm probably going to die with debt. And we don't want that.
No.
I don't want that.
And debt comes in a variety of forms. So how do we prioritize paying those different types of debt down?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. So why don't we start with the most expensive debt, which is usually your unsecured debt, which means credit cards, personal loans, payday loans.
Ooh.
Yeah. So starting with those, basically anything that is not tied to an asset. So your mortgage, for example, that's a debt, but it's tied to your house. So if something were to happen, they could take the house. Not that that's a good situation, right? But with a credit card, they can't come after anything. You have to pay the money back. So that unsecured debt is usually the most expensive. And that's why it's best to start with that.
Okay, so that's target numero uno.
Numero uno.
What's dos?
All right. So once you have all the unsecured debt taken care of, credit cards are paid, personal loans are paid, you move on to the next debt, which is the debt that is costing you the most every month. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a car loan and let's say you have student loans. Your car loan is $500 a month. Your student loans are $300 a month. That $500 a month that you're spending on your car loan, imagine if you had that back in your pocket and you can put it towards your student loans. Now we're paying our $300 student loan payment plus the extra $200. So focus on knocking that car out because it frees $500 a month for you.
So you're telling me to focus on the larger debt, not to look at the interest rate?
Or the debt with the largest monthly payment after all your credit cards are done, because your credit cards are going to have the highest interest rate. So we're assuming you already have that taken care of, right? Now, when you get to a place where it's just your car loan and your student loans, they're probably averaging about the same in terms of interest. So now you want to shift your focus on what's going to have the biggest impact on my monthly budget. And that is the debt that has the highest minimum payment every month.
Excellent information. Thank you for that. All right, so what's next?
So once you have your credit cards taken care of, you have the debt with the highest minimum payment every month taken care of, instead of focusing on something like your mortgage or hundreds of thousands of student loan debt, not saying ignore it, right? Why don't you shift your focus to having a true emergency fund?
What is a true emergency fund?
A true emergency fund is your 3 to 6 months worth of expenses.
Okay, I see you.
Yeah, so you don't need 3 to 6 months worth of expenses before you pay off your debt, right? Your debt is costing you more than having that 3 to 6 months worth of expenses sitting in savings.
Okay.
So you got to get rid of your debt. But once you've gotten rid of all that expensive debt and now you're just left with the bigger things like your mortgage or maybe student loans, instead of focusing all of your efforts there, build up that emergency fund. It's going to be a lot easier now.
So I feel like you've run down like all the major processes to get our budget in order. Do you have a few tips for us to help us along that journey to be successful?
I would say the top 3 things to make anybody's budget a success. First and foremost, factor in the fun spending, right? If you're depriving yourself completely, you are bound to splurge. I've been there. It happens, okay?
That's the danger zone.
That's the danger zone. So make sure you give yourself that 10 to 20%.
Okay.
Just do that for yourself, okay? Number 2, account for unexpected expenses. So imagine this. You have everything planned out in terms of your expenses and where your money should be going. What if something like a medical bill comes into the mix?
I go to my savings account.
Exactly. So if you have that savings, you can leverage that to cover those things. But what if you don't have that savings yet?
Okay. I see you.
Okay. So what I would suggest is adding a category into your budget called miscellaneous. Okay. $50 a month. Doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Just put that money to the side. That'll help you build up your reserves anyways. But if you don't have your reserves right now, that miscellaneous category can help if something does come up. And number 3, track your spending.
How?
Pen and paper, Excel, the Every Dollar app is good. There are plenty of options just reviewing your bank account activity. Okay, track your spending so that you actually know you're following the numbers you set.
Okay, so you just mentioned an app that I imagine you like. Do you have any other resources that you would recommend to the listeners to check out to make their budgeting journey a little more smooth sailing?
The City Girl Savings website.
All right.
Okay, shameless plug. But outside of that, I would also say Mint is really good. They send you plenty of notifications. But to be 100% honest with you, I am a Google Sheet/spreadsheet girl. I have my budget on my spreadsheet. Thank you for the calculations that happen without me, right?
Okay, yeah.
So I do it that way and it works. So it's about finding what works best for you.
What other resources could we use to further inform ourselves and empower ourselves as we lean into this potentially uncomfortable journey of budgeting?
So, outside of specific apps, you can read books. There are some books that I recommend, first and foremost being The 21-Day Financial Fast by Michelle Singletary.
Okay.
Single-handedly changed my financial outlook on how I spend money. So I would highly recommend that.
Wow.
If you're in debt, The Spender's Guide to Debt-Free Living, also a great book.
Okay.
If you want just higher level principles of proper money management, The Richest Man in Babylon. Start with those 3.
Okay. And we will list all of those with links in our show notes.
Next, move on to some podcasts. I would recommend The Fairer Sense for a podcast.
Yes, Miss Perez. Love her.
That's a great one. And The Secrets of Wealthy Women by the Wall Street Journal.
You are the second guest I've had in a couple weeks that have recommended that podcast.
I would highly recommend it. Super inspiring.
All right. Any other resources that are a big fave of yours?
There's so many personal finance blogs out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to connect with someone, find a blog. There is a blog out there for any personality type. The options are endless.
So what resources can our listeners find on City Girl Savings?
Yeah, so if you happen to come across the City Girl Savings website, there's a free gifts page. And
Okay.
on that page, I've created probably at least 20 different guides, trackers, resources just to help you improve your finances in a specific area. So for example, I have a Working Women's Financial Planning Kit if you need help writing out your goals. I also have a 40 ways to cut back cheat sheet if you're not sure what you should be cutting back. Here are some suggestions. There's a guide, a tracker, a resource for every topic that relates to your finances.
Most excellent. And just to remind y'all, all the resources that Raya mentioned in this episode, we will have listed in our show notes. So check them out. We'll have links. Raya, thank you so much for walking us through the budget making process. I feel like you gave us so much information that wasn't difficult. It wasn't as scary as the finance vibe kind of gives you, and it seems very accessible. So thank you for sharing this information with us.
Thank you for having me. And that's my mission, Lorelei, to help women understand that it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be intimidating. Don't let that fear stop you from achieving the life you want. So I'm so happy you said that, and I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. So to end our episode the way we normally do, I'm going to read a Femme fact to you today. So with all the recent upheaval, several companies are making great but long overdue strides to be more inclusive for communities of color. For example, you may have heard that Sephora pledged to dedicate a minimum of 15% shelf space to Black-owned companies. Etsy will be donating $500,000 to the Equal Justice Initiative, in addition to promoting more Black-owned small businesses on its marketplace. Fashion retail brands have reevaluated the diversity within their own workforce, especially in leadership positions, and have made commitments to take on more people of color into executive roles. And a huge moment just hit the world of dance when one of the leading ballet brands, Bloch, announced that they will be adding darker shades to their pointe shoe collection after an online petition went viral. In the following days, additional dancewear brands have joined in this commitment. Now, for those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with the ballet world, pointe shoes are the traditionally light pink shoes we see on ballerinas who are on stage, where you dance on the tips of your toes. And let's briefly throw it back to history for a moment. Ballet is traditionally a white-centric form of dance with European origins dating back to the Italian Renaissance of the 15th century. It was a dance form widely associated with aristocrats and made all the more famous by later Russian influences. And bringing it back to modern times, little has changed in the diversity aspect. Ballet is still a dance form where the aesthetics rely heavily on Eurocentric physical features, which include tall, lean frames, small heads, long necks, straight lines, flat chests. Now, this collection of characteristics does not easily apply to many non-white ethnicities. In addition to ballet's undeniable Eurocentric image, proper training is also incredibly costly, a fiscal barrier that keeps many minority and low-income groups from pursuing the art. Overall, ballet has been an art form that excludes communities of color, from its history to the very color of a pointe shoe. For dancers, receiving the go-ahead from a ballet instructor that you are ready to go on to the pointe shoe is the equivalent to graduation. It takes a lot of time and dedication to get there. Pointe work is no small feat for dancers, as it is the hallmark of their dancing careers. So imagine receiving that green light to progress through your artistry, and you get fitted for your shoes and find that the majority of the shoes being offered are in shades of pink, as well as the classic white and black shoe, but not in more common skin tone colors, including varying shades of brown. Now, pointe shoes might be a dream come true for some, but to dancers with darker complexions, this limited color selection might leave one feeling excluded, or more specifically, not included. In the professional world, the lack of darker pointe shoes poses a unique problem for many dancers. Ballet companies require dancers to wear pointe shoes that match their skin color so that the appearance of their legs seems synchronized while dancing on stage. Due to the lack of shade range from brands who manufacture pointe shoes, dancers often find themselves in their dressing rooms before a show doing what's called pancaking. That's where a dancer covers their pointe shoes with makeup and concealers to more closely match their skin color. Fortunately, Bloch's decision to expand the shade range of their shoes is a huge step forward for dancers of various ethnicities to feel more like athletes who are defined by their strength, determination, and artistry, and not by the color of their skin. And that's all the show we have for you today. To wrap up, I'd like to give a shout out to our unsung heroine and behind-the-scenes champion, our intern, Claudia Ng. Claudia is a full-time student who is passionate about inspiring women to be agents of change within their communities and spheres of influence. Thank you, Claudia. I am so grateful to have you on my team. And to all our listeners, I'm grateful for you too. Grateful for your attention, your interests, your downloads, and your perseverance. We are all in this together, and we are proud to be a resource to each and every one of you. And my deepest thanks to Raya Reaves for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lorelei. I'm so happy to be here.
Until next time, whether you're in the pointe shoe, the high heel, or in your flip-flops, keep making those leaps forward. You got this.